The night air carried the smell of damp pine and burning fuel. A German nurse, her uniform torn at the sleeve, stepped from the transport truck into the dim yard of a temporary U.S. holding station. Floodlights cut through the darkness, snow cracked under boots. She expected shouts, raised rifles, rough handling. Instead, an American guard lifted a lantern so she could see the ground. Another offered water. Her hands trembled from exhaustion and fear. She had worked through artillery fire only hours earlier. Now she stood silent, stunned by the calm voices and controlled movements around her. The war still raged far beyond the trees. The guns had not stopped, yet in this small corner, she felt a pause she did not understand. Germany, in early 1945, faced collapse. Allied forces advanced from the west, and the Soviet Union moved from the east. Cities suffered heavy bombings. Medical units struggled to keep pace with casualties. German military nurses served close to the front, supporting field hospitals under strict military command. Many operated in mobile medical stations that shifted positions as lines changed. Supplies ran low due to disrupted transport lines. Morphine, bandages, plasma, and basic tools often arrived late or not at all. Nurses improvised with limited equipment. Field surgeries grew more frequent as divisions sustained heavier losses. American forces entered regions of western Germany after crossing the Rhine in March 1945. The U.S. military prepared to encounter resistance, sabotage attempts, and scattered units of the Intelligence briefings warned that some German personnel might disguise themselves as medical staff. Commanders issued strict orders to treat genuine medical workers, according to the Geneva Convention, which protected nurses, doctors, and non-combatant medical personnel. Many American soldiers carried instructions in small printed cards that explained how to process medical staff taken into custody. German nurses often expected harsh treatment because Nazi propaganda had portrayed Allied soldiers as violent and indifferent to humanitarian rules. Some nurses feared immediate imprisonment under harsh conditions. Others believed the Allies would view them as part of the regime. Many had served in zones of heavy shelling, treating wounded soldiers and civilians through long shifts with little rest. When captured or detained, they arrived exhausted, dehydrated, and mentally strained from months of nonstop casualties. American field hospitals operated with better resources. Supply chains remained steady. Trucks transported plasma, penicillin, and surgical instruments with reliability. Staff rotations allowed for recuperation. When American units encountered German medical personnel, they followed protocol to separate combatants from non-combatants. Most nurses were taken to secure stations for documentation and questioning. The process required order, clarity, and restraint. Guards received training on handling prisoners in accordance with the rules of war. These conditions shaped the environment German nurses stepped into during the last months of the conflict. Many had never interacted with American soldiers before. Their only reference came from official broadcasts that described enemies without compassion. When nurses found themselves in the custody of U.S. guards, the gap between expectation and reality created a powerful moment of disbelief. They saw uniforms of the opposing army, yet the treatment contradicted everything they had been told. Some nurses had served through retreats across the Rhineland, carrying wounded soldiers on stretchers through ruined towns. Others had managed makeshift surgical rooms in basements after hospitals collapsed under bombardment. Their work placed them near front lines, where artillery impacts shook the walls. When American guards spoke calmly or offered basic assistance, the contrast felt striking against the brutality they had witnessed in previous days. It did not remove the fear or uncertainty, but it created a moment of human clarity inside a collapsing war. The human angle rested on exhaustion and surprise. Many nurses arrived after days without proper sleep. They had dressed wounds under candlelight. They had moved through buildings stripped by shell fire. They carried the memories of dying soldiers calling for relatives who could not reach them. When they encountered U.S. guards who acted with discipline, the shift in tone felt immediate. Guards often spoke with short commands, but without hostility. They pointed to shelter, offered blankets, or guided them to registration tables. For nurses accustomed to the harsh discipline of German officers in the final months of the war, this measured conduct felt unexpected. Some later recalled the calm as the first moment they realized the war would end soon. The tactical angle shaped the interaction. American units had to maintain security. They documented identities, verified medical roles, and separated personnel from mixed groups of refugees and soldiers who attempted to hide. Guards needed to prevent escapes and ensure no infiltration attempts occurred. They searched bags for weapons or classified documents. Yet once verified as medical workers, nurses were placed in designated areas for noncombatants. Tactical discipline created predictable structures. Predictability reduced fear, which helped stabilize processing centers. The operational tempo required speed because advancing divisions needed rear areas cleared quickly of displaced personnel. The technological angle played a role in contrast. American field hospitals had portable generators, sterilization units, and vehicles designed for rapid evacuation of wounded soldiers. German nurses who saw these systems during capture or during medical transfers noted differences. They observed American stretchers with better suspension systems. They saw penicillin used more freely. They watched orderly triage procedures that relied on established supply networks. Technology produced efficiency. Efficiency produced calm. Nurses understood the value of stable logistics. In the final phase of the German war effort, logistics had broken down. Seeing stability on the other side revealed how far the imbalance had grown. The enemy perspective angle came from the German side. Nurses viewed American guards as opponents who had pushed through fortified lines. They carried memories of bombings that destroyed cities. Each guard represented a force that had advanced steadily toward the heart of Germany. Some nurses felt bitterness. Others felt resignation. Yet even those with resentment noted that the guards followed procedures without personal aggression. The contrast between battlefield destruction and controlled detainment puzzled many. They expected retribution for the suffering they had witnessed. Instead, they observed professionalism shaped by Allied policy. The turning point often came during the first formal interaction. A German nurse would step forward for registration. An American guard or clerk asked simple questions. Name, rank, unit, medical role. She answered while trying to control trembling hands. The guard marked details on a clipboard, then directed her to a waiting area. No insults, no intimidation. This single moment broke through layers of wartime fear. Across multiple regions, similar scenes unfolded. In March and April 1945, American forces processed thousands of German personnel as they advanced through Rhineland towns and industrial centers. Near Remagen, after the Ludendorff Bridge was secured, American units encountered German medical detachments retreating under pressure. In Hesse, medical staff surrendered near roadblocks after their convoys became trapped by tank columns. In Bavaria, nurses from field hospitals in the Alpine foothills walked with white flags when supplies collapsed. When nurses entered holding sites, the routine remained consistent. Guards pointed them to benches or sheltered areas. Water stations stood near the entry points. Some received hot soup if kitchens operated nearby. Many nurses had not eaten a full meal for days. Hunger added weight to their emotional reaction. A simple metal cup of broth felt like evidence of a different world. The shock deepened when guards allowed them to rest without immediate interrogation. U.S. Army policy recognized the exhaustion among medical staff and prioritized stabilization. Some nurses fell asleep sitting up. Others leaned against walls, their boots still wet from snow. Nurses who had marched long distances with wounded soldiers finally released their tension in silence. For the first time in months, no artillery thundered nearby. Another turning element came when American medical officers inspected the German nurses' credentials. They spoke with them about previous duties. Some officers even asked technical questions about treatments performed under fire. The tone remained professional. This created a distinct psychological shift. Nurses who had been treated as expendable assets by their own command structures now experienced recognition of their skills from the opposing army. The wider turning point occurred on a strategic scale as well. Once the U.S. Army secured parts of Western Germany, the standardization of prisoner handling became systematic. This consistency amplified the impact. German nurses could compare reports from different regions. Accounts spread quickly. The message repeated. American guards followed rules. Medical personnel received proper treatment. These accounts disrupted long-standing propaganda. They also influenced the morale of remaining German units who considered surrender. One documented example involved nurses stationed near Mannheim. Their convoy was intercepted by American armored units. Expecting rough treatment, they complied with raised hands. A guard noticed a nurse struggling to steady an injured colleague. He stepped forward and helped her lift the wounded man onto a stretcher. This simple act created a lasting memory. The nurse later said that moment ended her fear of what would come next. She realized she was facing soldiers who respected medical duty. Such interactions were not isolated. Across sectors, similar patterns emerged. American guards carried procedures created after the experiences of North Africa, Italy, and France. They had processed prisoners before. They understood the importance of discipline. Many guards did not speak German, but gestures of patience conveyed intent. Nurses interpreted these gestures quickly. Their shoulders relaxed, their voices steadied. They realized they would not face violence. This was the point where disbelief shifted into understanding. They understood the war was ending. They understood they had survived. They understood that the rules of war still existed, even after years of destruction. The aftermath grew clearer as days passed. German nurses were moved to larger processing camps, where conditions varied, but most received adequate food, blankets, and medical checks. Some were assigned simple tasks inside the camp, such as assisting Allied medical teams with other German prisoners. Their skills remained valuable. Many preferred this work because it allowed them to maintain purpose during detention. American authorities documented each medical worker to determine future release procedures. Since the Geneva Convention protected noncombatant medical personnel, many nurses were held only temporarily. They were released earlier than combat soldiers. Some returned to towns that had been heavily damaged. Others were relocated to assist with civilian hospitals that suffered shortages of staff after the war. The experience also influenced American soldiers. Many guards noted the professionalism of the German nurses and documented how they had cared for wounded soldiers under extreme conditions. These observations shaped broader assessments of medical units in post-war reports. Lost infrastructure across Germany made reintegration difficult. Hospitals lacked equipment. Transportation networks remained broken. Food remained scarce. Nurses confronted new challenges as they worked in civilian environments marked by disease outbreaks, malnutrition, and displaced populations. The end of the war did not end their hardships, it only changed them. Yet many carried the memory of their treatment by American guards as a marker of stability during a chaotic transition. The respect shown by American guards also contributed to post-war reconciliation in subtle ways. Nurses who later spoke with Allied officials or humanitarian organizations often mentioned their early encounters as a reason they believed cooperation was possible. These accounts circulated in communities that needed reassurance after defeat. The war produced immense losses. German medical units suffered casualties from bombings, artillery, and frontline collapses. Many nurses had lost colleagues during retreats. Some had worked in hospitals destroyed by air raids. Their experiences formed a record of resilience under strain. When combined with the organized handling by American forces, the aftermath created a quiet foundation for rebuilding trust. The world learned a simple lesson from these moments. Even in the final months of a destructive war, adherence to rules of conduct preserved a sense of humanity. The treatment of German nurses by U.S. guards illustrated how discipline and respect could break through years of hostility. It showed that trained soldiers could maintain order without cruelty, even after witnessing destruction across continents. These interactions revealed that medical workers, regardless of uniform, carried a shared commitment to preserving life. In the years that followed, these memories helped shape post-war humanitarian standards and reinforced the belief that conduct in war influences the peace that follows.